Thank you for joining us for Everything Under the Sun, the AccuWeather podcast. I'm your host, meteorologist Regina Miller, and I'm joined in the studio by Andy Robb, my producer. And Andy, this week, our guest is a well-traveled guy.
Hello once again from New Orleans, Louisiana. The week has gone by fast. It's our final day in London and our final day in Europe. Good morning from Barbados. Today, I am headed to one of the island's most well-known beaches, which is the Crane Beach, which is located... So in this video, I'm going to show you 5 things that you can do for free right here in NYC.
Well, Lincoln Riddle is a video producer here at AccuWeather, and he is a travel vlogger. Take a listen to his trip that he did, the Great American Road Trip for AccuWeather.
AccuWeather's Great American Road Trip has come to an end. Over the last 3.5 weeks, we've driven from State College, Pennsylvania to Seattle, Washington, in a 4,050-mile sprint across the country that saw us visit 13 states.
So now, Lincoln, you're in the studio with us. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, taking a break from your travels.
Welcome back. Yeah, right.
Right. How was it? So tell me about the AccuWeather, this road trip, the Great American Road Trip, and like where you went, what you did.
Yeah, it was a blast. 13 states we crossed, 4,050 miles. So that went from State College, Pennsylvania to Seattle, Washington. Wasn't a straight shot like most people might do.
Right.
We were obviously producing content for AccuWeather, so we made a couple of different stops. But we went through Ohio, didn't make any stops there, but we visited Indiana, Chicago, then we went on up to Minneapolis, and then over through both Dakotas, and then Wyoming, Idaho, Oregon, on up into Seattle. And in that time, we visited 5 national parks, 1 national memorial, and 1 national monument. So we definitely saw a lot of the great stuff that this country has to offer.
Right. Well, it's a lot of the wide open spaces when you're heading up there. So, like, what was your favorite places that you went to?
I think my favorite place was Grand Teton National Park. The Tetons are magnificent. You have multiple peaks that are over 12,000, 13,000 feet right there, and it really does tower up over the valley below. So it is quite the sight, and you just look at them, they're very rugged, and it was crazy because that was the only place we saw rain the entire trip. Didn't rain for 3.5 weeks?
Are you serious?
Except that one time we were in Grand Teton. So
like, what kind of chances? Like, for me, that never happens.
Oh, yeah. I'd be getting rained on.
Right.
As soon as I leave from the moment I get back.
I know,
I'm
and then
sure.
it's all like outdoor stuff that you're checking on. So, my mom used to always do this, highs and lows. So the high point was the Grand Tetons, you think?
I think so, yeah.
All
It's
right.
magnificent.
Was it? Was there any lows? Like, what? Because, when I used to travel, because if you're traveling that many miles, who was going with you?
My wife was with me.
Oh my gosh, my husband and I would be divorced by the end of that trip. We really would.
Well, it worked out. She had to work the entire time. Like she's a travel writer, so she was just sitting there working on her computer.
Oh, nice.
So it kind of worked out. I would end up having to go do stuff for AccuWeather, so there was enough separation that we weren't just around each other like nonstop. Like we ended up going to a big wildfire in Idaho.
Oh, wow.
It was 110,000 acres, this fire was, and so we went to that, and I was there by myself for that. So, like, that took like an hour and a half to get to from where we had stopped anyway, so she was at the hotel, and then I just went on ahead and did that. Yeah. So you had plenty of separation there.
Well, and plus the fact that she's a travel writer.
Yeah, that
like,
helps too.
She's used to like I said with my husband, he's more like, we need to get to the destination. There needs to be no errors,
Right. No stopping.
Right, no stopping.
Yeah.
So how did you coordinate something like that? Like, did you get the call saying, hey, there's, this wildfire out there, go check it out? Or did you kind of do it on your own? Or
Yeah, that wildfire, I can't remember the name now. It was near Idaho Falls. It was at a nuclear... I'm not sure the exact name of it, but it was near Idaho Falls. So AccuWeather called me like early in the morning. Of course, I was on mountain time out there, so it was real early.
Oh,
and,
right.
Yeah,
and they're not, and the boss
5.
isn't thinking about that.
Right,
they're
yeah.
just like, hey, we need you to do this.
It's like 5 a.m., and they're like, hey, can you go out to this wildfire? I know you're headed west to Idaho Falls. I'm like, yeah, sure. So we got out there. I didn't want to get too close because it was a government site, but there was a highway that just went right through it, and they had all these pull-offs. So because there's a lot of buttes out that way to view, so it was easy to see. It was right there next to the road. But they just called me, told me to go out there, and just kind of made it happen. It just really fell in line with the schedule too. It was just kind of like almost along the route. So
yeah. Now, when you're planning, so when you're planning a trip like this, how much time goes into that to actually getting the whole thing together?
A lot of time. So we wanted to make sure that everywhere we stopped for a significant amount of time, there was actually something to do. So, something relevant that we could see. So that took a lot of time, just getting that route nailed down because, as we talked about, a lot can go wrong on a road trip. You can have a flat tire, traffic, poor weather.
Right.
So I tried to make sure that the route we chose, which was a northern route, just, trying to be safe make sure we don't get caught up in any mountains or anything. Or we visited Minneapolis and Chicago as well as Seattle and Portland. Didn't want to get stuck in traffic there, which we didn't. Along with the rain, there was no massive car accidents. I mean,
Is this great planning or is this just accidental success?
I think it's 3.5 weeks of bliss, travel bliss. I don't know how that happened. That'll never happen again.
So when it comes to traveling, okay, so you didn't have any real vehicular issues. So why don't we talk about gas, filling up your car? What was it like when you were traveling across the country and the different gas prices that you saw?
It was really interesting. I think the lowest price I saw was like $2.50. The highest price was up near $3.50, about $1 more. That was in Bellevue, Washington, I think.
Okay.
And the prices really varied. In some cases, I'd be at a gas station, be like Cody, Wyoming, and you drive like a mile down the road. It's like 30 cents more. I don't know why, but that happened.
Right.
That seemed to happen a lot, especially near the national parks. I guess the closer you get, the more the prices go up. So,
probably on the areas where the most tourists are driving,
Yeah,
even if they're only like 5 miles from a little spot in town.
Right. Yeah. And I would say everything pretty much hovered though. For the most part, we're looking at like $2.70 a gallon, $2.80 a gallon. Of course, that was July 2019, so prices may be different now. But
so once you roll into whatever town you are, you kind of just compare and contrast. You kind of just keep your eyes on the stops.
If it was like a massive difference, then I would go. And like I said, sometimes it was like 30 cents difference, which is enough to make a
pretty significant.
That's a couple dollars saved. So
yeah,
right. But I think it was on the company dime.
Oh yeah, so
it was on the company dime. Like a big spender.
I didn't have to go out of my way to make sure we saved.
Right, exactly. So you didn't have any. Which is amazing to me. So you didn't have any real travel problems. You didn't have any real weather or traffic nightmares. So was there any low spots on the trip? Please tell me there was something because I
did. So our very first stop was Indiana Dunes. We got there the first day we left, July 8th. We got there that night. The next day, we spent the day in the park. We interviewed a couple people. We saw everything, and it was a beautiful day. It was nice and warm. But I did this live shot on the AccuWeather network at like 4 o'clock. And we're all ready to go to Chicago. We're excited because we got married in Chicago. So it's
really?
Yeah,
that's nice.
So we like going to Chicago, and so we're packing up. We're all excited. We're gonna go to Chicago, and we hit the road. We can see the skyline off in the distance. We're on the Skyway and the Chicago Skyway, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh no! I look at my wrist or my hand. I can notice that I'm missing my wedding ring. So,
oh my gosh!
So I see it, and then I'm like, should we go back?
Should I tell my wife who's sitting in the seat next to me?
And to be honest, the ring I have was cheap. We bought it thinking I would lose it because I like to get in water and stuff. So the idea was like, I'm gonna end up losing this someday.
Right.
So we bought a cheap ring, but I've managed to have it for several years now.
Yeah.
And so I notice it. And I tell her, I'm like, should we go back? And she's like, well, I'm kind of tired. And I'm like, but I mean, come on.
It's my wedding ring.
Right? And so then I make the decision. I'm like, you know what? We'll drive back. It's like an hour haul. And I call and I'm like, hey, did I have my ring on in that live shot? And they told me I did. So that really narrowed it down and made it easy to know where it might be. And sure enough, there it was in the parking lot. So we drove all the way back, and there, it was laying there. I'm just glad no one picked it up and maybe reported it or something, because I wouldn't have been in the area to get it at that point.
Wow.
Right. Well, that's good thing you found it. That was lucky. That's the lucky thing about being on television, is because at least you've got a video documentation of where you were. Tell me about the best and worst weather you encountered. You said most of it was really good.
Yeah.
Did you encounter anything that was really bad?
No, I mean, it's such a... There were some storms that produced some tornadoes while we were in the Dakotas, but they didn't fire up anywhere near us. Like, I mean, when I say near us, they'd be like 30 or 40 miles away. Okay. And so there was some stuff like that. I think there was some minor damage in one or two instances, but it was just honestly sunny. Mm-hmm. There were like no clouds. It was the strangest 3.5 weeks. Typically when I travel, I mean, it's going to rain. If I travel, it's
Oh,
going to
really?
rain.
Okay.
I go camping, it will rain, like without fail.
Maybe
Book
it's
it.
the luck of AccuWeather.
Yeah, maybe it is, and that's the thing. I got out there. I was expecting. I had all this rain gear. I'm like, this is gonna be, it's gonna be bad. But that didn't happen. Now it was really chilly in like Wyoming and South Dakota in the mornings. It got kind of cold, like in Jackson, Wyoming, and in Cody. It was down like maybe 50 degrees in the morning. So, and on the East Coast we have a lot of humidity, and it's
You don't
hot.
get that. Yeah, you don't
it's
get
hot
that
in
cold.
summer.
Humidity.
So it was just odd seeing upper 40s, low 50s, and so I had to wear some jackets. But that was pretty much it. That was the extent of it.
Now, if you had to suggest on that trip, if you had to suggest a 1-day trip to anybody, what would it be? Like from that trip, where would you be like, this is the place and the day and the one we'd want to go back to?
Well, if I had to go back anywhere, it would be Yellowstone.
Okay.
If I had to choose, it would be Yellowstone because we only spent 8 hours in Yellowstone, and we drove the Loop Road. The Loop Road's like 140 miles or something like that. It's long. Of course, Yellowstone's massive. It's like the size of like Rhode Island or something. I don't know which.
Yeah,
state
you're
it
driving
is.
the whole. It's like driving the whole way around.
It's
the state.
gigantic. So Yellowstone's fantastic, and there's so much to see there. And throughout the trip, we didn't really have time to hike, and Yellowstone has a lot of that. And there's just so much. There's a lot of wildlife, and some of the roads going into Yellowstone, like coming in from Montana, those are apparently, I don't know, I didn't get that opportunity, but apparently they're spectacular views of wildlife, and then just the views of the mountains as well. So Yellowstone is where I would recommend you spend at least more than 1 day, 2 days.
Especially if it's a driving trip.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the fact that it is so pretty. Because some destinations you don't want to
Right.
be driving. You'd rather get in the plane, be there,
Right.
and then go back.
Right.
So-
Well, and Yellowstone's right next to Grand Teton, so you can see them both
Right.
in that one. If you only had a day, in theory, you'd really have to stretch that time out, but you could see them both if you wanted to.
Yeah, you kind of got to be running around.
Gotta be running around.
Imagine because 8
Yeah.
hours
Yeah.
probably just
I
goes
mean,
by
Flies
like
right
that.
That's like a 6 a.m. morning and be done at 9 at night. So-
Right.
But it was good that amount of
yeah.
time that you spent out there. You probably didn't even notice like how
Yeah.
quickly the
No,
day
it,
got
it
by
flew
you.
by, and like seeing the buffalo on the side of the road, that was really cool.
See,
And
that must have been
would be
amazing.
really-
Yeah.
See, I did that whenever I was young. We went out west, and geez, I was only 10, so I don't even know what state I was in. But I do remember the buffalo and thinking that is incredible because it looked like cows would be here in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
they're
There'd
just
be just a
right there.
field, and they're just
Yeah.
right there, and they're huge.
Yeah.
And you did not get close to
No,
anything
you're
like
not
that
supposed to do
video.
that. Yeah,
did you
I
see
saw
that
it.
video with that family and that little girl? They were like, no, these are wild
Yeah.
animals. You don't go up to them. So I want you to pick. I want to ask you some questions about what kind of traveler you are.
Okay.
Okay. Because, you're a vlogger. So,
Yeah.
obviously you like to do it.
Yeah.
So resort or freestyle?
Oh, that's a tough. If I'm really tired, like right now, we're planning a big trip in September, and typically in September we go to Europe. But right now I'm thinking like, man, send me to the Caribbean. I want to sit on a beach.
Yeah, and do nothing.
And do nothing. But also at the same time, I may do that, and then 3 months from now, I'm like, man, we really should have gone to Europe and done like a 5-country backpacking journey. So it just depends.
Backpacking.
It just depends on
Again, you're still married.
So it just depends. I think in overall, I would say freestyle. But if I'm really tired, I'll go for the resort.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's more if you just want a
Just
relaxing
to chill.
vacation.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, city or outdoors?
Ooh, again, that's a tough call. This trip gave me a new respect for the outdoors. I've always loved the outdoors, but this trip, seeing all those places, being out in the middle in essentially nowhere a lot of the time.
Right.
And, it was just so pretty, especially, we're out west. On the East Coast, I've lived on the East Coast most of my life, so it's, seeing the mountains here is kind of like whatever. But out there, it was just so gorgeous.
Well,
But
and they're very different.
very
the
different.
mountains are
They're
so
rugged,
different
tall.
out
Yeah.
there. Right.
I would have to go city, though. I love the city, or cities.
Right.
So I think I would go cities on that.
Okay. So camping and RVing or hotels? Camping and or RVing.
I'd probably
or hotels.
go. I think I would go hotels on that.
Okay.
I think so. I do like camping, but I just
So
like
the
staying in a
backpacking
hotel.
trip, like you were saying, backpacking trip. You would
Mm-hmm.
do a backpacking trip. Would you like backpack to a place that has a hotel
No,
and a
I
shower?
mean,
and
I don't know. I don't know what everybody's idea of backpacking is. I think it's all different.
Yeah.
For me, that means we're really hitting the road fast, visiting lots of different places. And
Yeah.
we do actually use backpacks, so it's like I
Yeah.
think that to me, I would go. I've never camped in Europe, but that would be a great time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like hotels just because of the amenities and after a long day.
Yeah, it's a long day.
Yeah, it's a long day, yeah.
Yeah. And so are you a journey or destination person? So like for me, for example, even if I get lost along the way, like we went to Italy, my husband and I. And when we went, I am like, if I get lost or if things go wrong, I don't care because I'm like, I am lost in Italy.
Yeah.
Like, look at where I am.
Right.
And for him, he's like, well, we were heading to the Colosseum. We need to get to the Colosseum. So he's a destination guy. And then once he gets to his destination, he's great. But the journey part of it is like just something you got to do to get there. So which are you?
I mean, we plan the destinations out, but I think I'm the journey person. I like to go with the flow, and things go wrong. I mean, the last time I was in Europe, we missed a train by like 5 seconds, and it really wrecked the entire day. So that was in Scotland.
Oh,
and
really?
and that really made things tough. But it was fun. And looking back now on it, we ended up seeing some stuff we wouldn't have seen otherwise. So if you don't get that kind of stuff in, it's not the same, at least in my opinion.
Right, you have to get a little bit of that.
You gotta get a little bit.
yeah, because then it takes you off your track.
Right.
And who knows what kind of track you'll end up on. So so this is kind of resort or freestyle. So tours or go it alone. Like when you're in a city, do you go to some of the tours that they have, or do you like to just say, okay, I'm going to look online, find out what people say?
I like to go at it alone. I think experiencing it on my own. When you're in those tour groups, they tend to move really fast. Maybe you want to hover on something, you really like it. However, I did go on a ghost tour in New Orleans like 2 months ago.
Oh, I'm going to New Orleans. Should I do that?
Yeah, you definitely should. This was a vampire ghost tour, and it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And that was like probably the best tour. Not the best, but it was really well done. It was one of the better tours I've been on. So I guess it just depends. But I tend to like to just go at it alone, see stuff at my own pace, and plus I don't necessarily want to see everything on the tour anyway. So then I don't have to.
Oh yeah, true.
But yeah, I like to do things alone. I think it's better that way.
All right. And so the next thing I want to ask you about is some different tips.
Okay.
So what are your best tips for flying?
Like how so?
And anything, whether you found money-saving tips, whether you found tips on just packing and making it simple for yourself.
I think the best tip I can offer on flying, if you want to save money, use skyscanner.com. This is not a plug, not a sponsor.
Oh, really?
Use skyscanner.com. You can search your local airport and then choose destination everywhere. It'll show you like all of the flights out of your local airport, and it'll rank them by cost and country. So like if you don't know where you want to go,
right?
Let's say you live near Philadelphia Airport, so that's your home airport. You don't know where you want to go. You hit Philadelphia, and you search everywhere, and it'll just rank them. It'll be USA, $77, flight starting at $77. Canada, flight starting at $200. United Kingdom, flight starting at $300.
Wow.
And then you can just click through them, and that's how I find so many like good flight deals. Is I just use that website, and then I build a trip around that.
Right.
And so I actually flew to Barbados for free back in April from using that website. Yeah, I was able to bundle the flights with the hotels. Of course, using the website, the flights cost money, but then I managed to bundle them together and saved the cost of the flight. So skyscanner.com,
right?
Not paid, not an advertisement.
Right, but that's interesting. But you have to have flexibility for those kind of trips.
Kind of. You can use the dates that you actually need to travel, but if you're looking for the best deal possible, your best bet is just to let it, be wide open. And typically, you can find, if you live in a major city, you can find really good deals to Europe using that website or anywhere else.
Because I haven't done much to Europe. I only did Italy.
Yeah.
So I'd like to do more. I think
I've only looked at a map of Europe, so.
Have you?
You guys got me beat. You both got me beat. Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing is, what's your best advice on like hotels?
Hotels, I think if you use one of those sites that allows you to book the hotel, you can't see the hotel before you book it. You just know the
vicinity.
Area. Yeah, you know the vicinity
rating.
And you know like its rating and what the user rates it, like the people actually stay there, not just the generic like this is a 4-star. I think using those, I typically find the best deals that way. When you're looking at hotels, you can either pay, the full cost because you wanted to see what it was, or you can gamble a little bit and maybe, you'll save like $50 a night or something. So in my opinion, I almost always go
just
for
pick
that.
a vicinity.
Yeah. And sometimes you can figure it out if you're really willing to spend the time. So yeah, I like to do that. I do sometimes just book it straight up though, because sometimes the savings aren't enough. You know, if we're talking like $20, I'd rather just go on ahead and know.
Yeah.
But if you're booking hotels, I almost would never recommend booking directly through the
hotel website,
because that's not where the best deal is going to be. Not always, but a lot of the times that's not where you're going to find your best deal.
Right. And any money saving tips and should you even try? Like if you're trying to save money.
Yeah.
What would be some of your best money saving tips? You got the flights, you got the hotels.
Yeah.
Do you have any other ideas on how to save
I
money?
mean, those are the real big ones. If you can bundle those trips together and it makes sense to do it, you can really save a lot of money that way. And again, it's not always, bundling a trip doesn't always yield like some massive savings, but sometimes it does. Like that trip I did to Barbados, that we just paid for the hotel room. The flights were free.
Yeah.
So I think if you want to save money, you need to sit there and you need to take the time to save money, because a lot of people, I think they just, I want to go to Mexico City.
And they want to be done that night.
They
Like
wanna
I'm
be
sitting
done.
down on a Friday
Yeah.
night and I'm booking and I want it to be
right.
done.
And also flexibility is a big one. A lot of people have to go on this day and
Because of their job.
because of their job or whatever.
Right.
If you can, if you're able to book a year out and you know that you'll probably be able to get off work, look a year out. That's when you're going to save a ton of money. Even 6 months, even just a couple months. But as long as you can be flexible, and sometimes just changing the day of the week. You're leaving on Friday, maybe Saturday saves you $250 just because the plane's not as full and whatever reason.
So just keep tweaking around on
just
that
tweak it.
for
That's
a while.
I think I told you the last time I was on here. I literally sit at home and I'll just, if I'm
Yeah.
bored, I'll just sit there and look
That's
for
your
trips.
hobby.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
And eventually I will come across some good deal. I'll go running into my wife's office. Holly, we need to book this. Like last night, I found this trip to Prague for next month.
Seriously? Like,
And
what?
it was like $1,900 for 8 nights and round trip flights nonstop. And I'm like, this is a fantastic deal.
Yeah.
And for 2 people total, $1,900. I'm like, we got to do this. We didn't end up doing it because we couldn't.
Right.
We had to do an extra day and we couldn't. But I'm like, this is a fantastic deal. So that's kind of how I do it. You really got to put that time in. It's all about the time.
And the good thing too is like certain jobs now, like for us, for example, because I work on the network, I got to be in house. I got to be in front of the camera and the camera turns on.
Right.
So it's like getting that time off is more difficult. But there's so many jobs now that you're doing so much remotely.
Yeah.
That you can travel. Because that's the other hard part is just like getting the time off depending upon your job.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up with the Great American Road Trip, I actually did have another question I wanted to ask you
Okay.
about some of the places that you went to.
Okay.
Food.
Oh,
What
why
were
didn't
some
I think about that?
places-
Right.
What were some of the best
Food.
eats that you had? Maybe some off the beaten paths, some
Yeah.
roadside places. What kind of places did you enjoy?
Guy Fieri.
So much happened on that trip. I can't remember names, but I do remember the actual places. We ate at, there was a restaurant in Portland, Oregon. It's near Voodoo Donuts. That's a major
Oh, really? Okay.
tourist spot in Portland. We had, it's really tough to remember this now. I'm sitting here thinking about it. It was like a bakery. I think it was called like Mother's Bakery or something. That place was fantastic. That was in Portland. That was kind of like comfort food.
Nice.
But we ate there. A lot of those cities have these just really random stuff. So
Like little spots that you might not know about.
yeah, and so we kind of stuck to that as much as possible. So I'm saying like now I'm struggling to remember anything because it was such a long trip.
Do you ever like just go up and start asking the locals?
Yeah. I mean, I usually the first thing I do, I'll get into the hotel and I'll just ask them, hey, where's a good place to eat around here? And they usually will give you a ton of spots, and they'll ask, what do you want? Like Boise, Idaho has this one road, and it's just loaded with restaurants. Like there's a lot of restaurants, and it's just back to back to back to back. And that's where they told me, like, go to this road, and then they'll have the menus on the sidewalk. You know how they do that.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did for that. And the food, and a lot of the places we went, the food was excellent. I just now at this point I can't remember what I had.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
That's a long time.
It's a long
That's
time.
a-
I did do a Taste of Chicago. Ironically, that's
Is that a food festival?
yeah, it's a really large food festival right in the heart of downtown
Oh,
Chicago.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
tell us about
So
that.
was that on this trip?
It was on this trip. It was the third day. It was like we just started.
And
now,
and who in the building do we need to talk about to get me to go on this trip?
well, it was kind of ironic. I'm at this food festival, but it was really hot. It was like 95, 96 degrees that day, and humidity was really high. So it was a hot day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just working, like interviewing people, and I was so hot that I wasn't hungry. So I ended up just eating Italian ice. So I'm standing there thinking, man, I am at a Taste of Chicago. This is one of the largest, and it's one of the largest outdoor free admission food festivals in the world.
It's free admission.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there thinking like, I cannot believe I'm here. And I was not hungry.
Yeah.
And so I had Italian ice, and I drank I think I drank like 6 bottles of water at that festival in like a 4-hour period. 'Cause
right.
It was a steamer out there. So.
Well, whoever had the Italian ice stand did it right,
they were.
man.
There
Because
was
I
a
was going to
line.
say there's all
There
this
was a
gourmet
line.
food, but you
Right.
know everybody's flocking to the snow cone stand.
So, Lincoln, if some people miss some details of your excursion and they want to see some stuff about the Great American Road Trip, where can they go? Where can they watch it?
It is all on AccuWeather.com. Just search Great American Road Trip, and you'll be able to find it.
And the nice thing is you'll be able to see some of those sites that you were talking about, and
Yeah.
maybe plan your trip.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about this before as well,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also find some of those tips about finding the best prices for airlines and everything on your YouTube channel. What is it again?
It's just my name, Lincoln Riddle. If you search that, I'm the first thing that'll come up, followed by some stuff about cars.
Oh, really?
But I'm the first thing that'll come up. You can click on that. I travel all over the world. So working on a series on New Orleans. I will have something on the Great American Road Trip. I just haven't finished putting that together yet.
That sounds great. And so afterwards, you need to sit here with me because I'm actually going to New Orleans.
Yeah.
So I need like a 3-day itinerary for
problem.
New Orleans. So you can tell me what it is. So thanks so much again for
Lincoln.
joining
Thanks for
us,
having
Lincoln.
me.
Two of my favorite things to talk about, Andy, weather and travel.
And they all surprisingly go hand in hand with each other.
They go very well. When you got good weather, you got good travel. It just kind of works that way.
Pretty cool. You got to do 13 states in 3 weeks. Unbelievable. So
know.
once again, our thanks to our very own Lincoln Riddle for joining us.
Yeah, great discussion. And next week, we are going to be visiting an area that was really hit hard. Hurricane Harvey. It's approaching 2 years, believe it or not,
Yeah.
Andy. It went pretty quickly. But it's the anniversary of Hurricane Harvey, and we are going to be talking to Travis Herzog. He's the chief meteorologist at KTRK in Houston, and we're going to be talking about how Houston is still rebuilding because the area, it's a big undertaking, and they were really devastated by Hurricane Harvey.
Yeah, large metropolitan area, an even larger storm. So we're going to find out all about that, like you said, Regina, with our special guest, Travis Herzog from ABC 13 in Houston, coming up next week.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to AccuWeather's Everything Under the Sun, giving you the stories behind the weather and so much more. New episodes every Thursday. Just search for AccuWeather on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or visit AccuWeather.com/podcast.